Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the presentation on AI use and syllabus in higher education. My name is Tuan and I'll be your presenter today. Since this presentation is being recorded, please hold your questions towards the end. If it is important, please highlight it on your notes that I can answer that. I will try to get through everything. I know there's a lot of material and maybe some additional questions and concerns, especially since it is a hot topic of adding it within your syllabus. In today's presentation, we're looking at and discussing what we know about AI and why AI is important, why we need to think about some of the requirements within our syllabus. We also want to think of the ethical and practical uses of using AI within our courses as well too, and putting it on our syllabi. And then talk about some strategies for faculty and for students. It is not just in this presentation to look at faculty and how we add AI in our syllabus, but it is also to look at how we can instruct our students to use it effectively. What is AI in education? AI, in this case for all of you, is all about artificial intelligence. It is used as a mimicking tool of the human responses, but it's also used as a learning platform as well too. It is to teach students some concepts and skills that they do not know or have some better understanding of it, to break it down in a language that they can understand. It is also used as an instructional tool for us as instructors to maybe go through some things that we maybe want to use or utilize in our classes more effectively. Even though we have our skills in that area, but we can use some additional support. So think of AI as a learning tool for not just the students, but also for ourselves as well. AI has different components out there. One of the most famous ones that you'll see that most students like is the chat box. It is, in this case, a great supporter because it uses language that you as the instructor can design in whatever language that is appropriate, in English or Spanish, Portuguese, or even in French. And in this, it helps students to understand basically things that you would like to illustrate in your class, but don't have enough time to do so. I know a lot of us think that AI is a plagiarism tool, but in that we can instruct our students how to use it effectively. But that's also designing your syllabus with the information that they need so they can use it effectively. Some benefits of using AI in the classroom. Here as instructors, we can utilize it to help our students, but it also can help us as well too. I know I use it in a sense in Blackboard to create some things that I just don't have enough time to do so. It can also be used as a personalized tool for our students. Sometimes the students may need some step-by-step instructions that we do not have enough time to do in the classroom. We can create an AI for that will create those personalized tools for them. It also gives some immediate feedback if we just don't have the time to actually do that. In my class, for example, they have to do discussions, and within those discussions, I'm trying to give a lot of feedback. However, I did set up as the AI when it's very a long discussion to give feedback very fast and for me because I just don't have enough time to actually read through pages of feedbacks or discussions. So in this, it is a lot of benefit tools. I know as instructors and as education institution, we're concerned about the data that's being collected. There is safeguards that you can use and create within your classes using AI so that the data is not being used outside the institution or outside your class. The challenges that we have with AI is that we have students that will be over-reliant of it. They will use it every chance they can possibly get. We want to reduce that by showing them or instructing them how it can be used effectively. It also is a concern about academic integrity. There's been a discussion last year in most of my workshops that I attended about AI that a lot of us in higher education, I shouldn't just say higher education, but in K through 12 as well too, concerned about using AI and violating the academic integrity of that. There's ways to get around that by explaining to your students how to use it correctly and how to cite it within any and all documentations that they have. I know We think of the privacy of the data as well that's being collected from that. But again, there's ways to safeguard so that the data that you're using within your classes and the institution is not being fed into the AI and used in all other places as well. So with that is about training. The training in this case is not just coming from our institution of Triton College, but it comes from going to different workshops, symposiums, conferences, and learning a lot that we can do about AI. Previously, we had a presentation for the CTE that talked about how AI can be used in your classrooms, but our presenter failed to talk about how to protect that data in this case. Today, we'll not talk about that because that's a presentation all on its own, but to talk about how you can implement it within your syllabus, within your course, so that you, as the instructor, would know how to use it effectively as well. Within the AI, within your syllabus, you want to set up some safeguards, guardrails. And most institutions in this case use what is called the stop sign. They use a red, green, and yellow. Red means that they can never ever use it, and some of us in this institution have that within our departments. We're telling our students they can never ever use it. However, green in this case says they can, but you have to have some parameters to tell them exactly how they can use it. So for example, if you're teaching a course and you're saying they can use ChatGPT, you want to give them some guidelines of how to use it correctly. Don't overuse it and don't misuse it. And when I say that, I've had a student in a situation where they put in their project in ChatGPT and did the entire project. I cited the student on it because A, he didn't follow the guidelines, and B, none of it was correct. So in that, consider the tone, the vocabulary, the voice that you put within your syllabus of how you want that to be used. If you do not want a student to use it, make sure you have it spelled out. I know as educators, we always do that in our syllabi, but you really do want to make sure you do that because the student can, in this case, use it against you because it was not in your syllabus to say that you never allowed them not to use it. Be acceptable of the tool, but also make sure you have, again, guidelines in doing so. Be transparent about the rules and the regulations of using AI within your classes, because if you do not, I assure you, it will come back and bite you. And I don't mean in a nice, soft way. It'll come back to bite you because it'll be stated, A, you never said I couldn't. And you're right, it was not spelled out in your syllabus. Align your learning objectives along with AI just to be on the safeguard. And that's not to say that you have to do it, but we're looking at a society that are using AI. So we want to make sure we align the requirements, if it's an assignment, a project, a test, anything that aligns with your requirements of your course and what they should be learning. Encourage, strong word, encourage your students to be responsible. When students in this case know that they can use it, there is a safeguard in it to say that they won't use it unethically. But we still need to let them know that we're still monitoring them and making sure that they don't use it unethically. Challenges and risk, well, the discussion is, in this case, the biggest one is academic integrity. It's a huge discussion about how AI is violating that. Yes, we do have students who are going to ChatGPT, for example, write whatever prompt they need, send it back to us and say they can read it themselves. Yes and no. They did not create it themselves. ChatGPT helped them, but they just gave them a prompt to start. Well, give them encouragement and saying it's a great start, but it's looking, or I'm looking at your original work. I'm looking at how you are creative. ChatGPT, in this case, and all the AIs out there are very creative in creating any and everything fast. But that takes away from the students' knowledge of what we are looking for them. We're looking for their creativities. And employers, in this case, we at the institution of higher learning need to give them that outlet. Because when they get out there in the real world and they're asked that question, they can't be stumbling over it because AI is not there to help them. It's our job to give them that creativity and let them blossom in the class. I know that training is important, and there it is, and it's one of the things that we need to do in every institution. There are a lot of institutions out there currently right now, they're training their staff, their employees, their faculty, how to use AI when they want to use AI in the classroom. Companies, industries are doing the same thing. In fact, there has been reports that some industries are requiring their employees to know how to use AI because AI is secretly in the future. Shouldn't say secretly because it's already here, but it is secretly. So in this, how do we integrate it into our syllabus? Well, clearly state your AI policy, one. Two, look at what acceptable tools that you're going to use for your class. If it is ChatGPT, a chatbot, there are tons. And me as a math professor, there's even a math AI. I even saw it online and I saw my student use it. And I'm like, okay. I said, you realize you can't use it in class. But it did spell out for my student a step-by-step instructions on how to do a problem. I was proud of that. I just know you can't use it because in my syllabus it does state you cannot use an AI for any of your homework or an exam. But it was good for him to use it as a learning tool to how to do the problem. Encourage responsible use of AI and also use the AI language within your learning objective. You don't have to change it, just say incorporate it to say that it can or cannot be utilized. Here's some sample language that you could use, and I know there's tons and tons out there, but here's some samples that I gathered from some of my colleagues at other institutions. Number one, students may use AI for brainstorming, drafting ideas, but students must produce original work. They gave examples of Grammarly. If you didn't know that, it is part of an AI, and ChatGPT. My colleague at the Institution of Colorado stated that in their presentation to their students. And she told me, she said, I know they use it, but I'm allowing them and telling them that I will check for it. So she did put in the language that it can be used as a brainstorming, but don't overutilize it in writing your own thoughts. AI generates content that must be cited appropriately. If you did not know, APA and MLA, which is being the Modern Language Association, and APA, the American Psychological Association, has now introduced and added AI chats and also added AI citations. Because we are at the higher institution, we are supposed to be the ones who face that first. We didn't catch it yet, but they did, they called it for us. So if you did not know that, do add that. And also, our tutors here in the tutoring center are aware of that as well too. I did talk to our director of the tutoring for writing. She was aware of it, and they are getting training in regards to that as well too, to look for it and help students how to cite it within any documentation that they have to do. AI should support learning, not replace understanding. This is actually me. That's actually what I tell my students in my class. It's great for learning, but it does not replace any and everything that you have to do. So I spelled that out because I know, like I said, I saw an AI for math. We do have students who are using it. And again, going back to some of my colleagues at other institutions here in Illinois are afraid that when students outside the classroom produces papers and they come back and it's been A work, but they have been F in the classroom. So we just have to be aware of that. Here are some best practices for us as faculty members. Provide students with an AI literacy resources. There are tons out there for all of you. There is some different guidelines that you can research on your own as well too, or create a guideline that you know for your own discipline. We all teach different disciplines, and we know what's best for our students. For example, as a math professor, I know, and like I said, I saw a student use a math AI. So I did encourage him that he could use it in his own time, but he is not allowed to use it in the classroom and on the exam. So I'm encouraging, because I know he found it, and so did I. Use some model ethics for your students. Be transparent about why you are doing these things, and let your students know the consequences with that. Again, It comes back to bite you when you have your dean or associate dean comes to you and say, well, I have student X in my office, and you told them they failed the course, but nothing says in your syllabus they couldn't use an AI tool. You're right. That's not a foundation that is strong, but in your syllabus becomes the contract, it is strong, and yes, now your dean or associate dean has something to fight back for you. Not to say that I'm trying to give props to every and everyone. If you need to, you can use AI in this case to ask students to reflect on it. We have a colleague here, Jim Ellis, who does it all the time in his class. In fact, he uses AI in psychology to talk about how AI and human interaction works together. Sometimes they fight, sometimes they don't know, and the other one doesn't care. But it is something that we do face. As a math instructor, again, I also teach math for elementary educators. And one of the topics that we're talking about in our class starting next week is how AI is used in the classroom, because they are future teachers and they're going to be faced with that. Some additional ones in this case, make sure you're being transparent about any assignments that you're giving your students. Make sure they understand exactly the parameters that you're putting down and the guidelines for using or not using AI. Establish a class-wide policy. This, in this case, put in your syllabus exactly how and why AI cannot or can be used. Again, it is our defense when a student comes into your class and you fail them because they used it, but it's not cited in your syllabus whatsoever. Yep, some of them do look at it and some of them don't. Use any AI tools as a support, which is what I say to my students. I know that I have one student with some minor difficulties in understanding the language in the classroom, but also math being universal, but to him it's not. That's why I'm using my student as an example without revealing names, does use it outside the classroom. And I'm proud of that because it does give it and breaks it down. But it breaks it down in a language of his native tongue so he can better understand it. I encourage my students, but I also make sure that they do not violate the policy of using it. And again, it is spelled out in my syllabus exactly what they can and cannot do. Also, design any assignments with a minimum over-reliance of AI. We know that students outside this institution and outside your classroom may use it. So try to create an assignment that you know it may not be caught. I know it's kind of hard to do so, but it is a challenge for us because that's what we want. We want them to be creative thinkers. We want them to be independent thinkers, but we also want them to make sure that they're doing it on their own. Stay informed because there are a lot of AIs that keep coming out. In fact, today I noticed another new AI for math, and I was like so ecstatic about it. Granted, it had some problems, but I'm never going to tell anybody they couldn't use it in the classroom because that's what I don't want them to do. But I want to hopefully attend a workshop that will talk about some of these additional AIs. And for all of you, I am going to be part of an AI fellowship for Triton to talk about how AI is going to be utilized here at Triton College. And within that, hopefully they will talk about how to create some additional practices in this case. Other institutions are using the best practices of informing their students, and I think that is the #1 goal. Inform your students and not being ignorant about it and saying that we do not know there's AI out there. We do, and you should do, and you should know, because if they're using it, they're going to try to way and use it in the class and get around it. An example that was given by a presentation by a psychologist teacher, which was at Lake County, she noticed the student was doing horribly in the classroom, but when they went home to do the work, they did A, work, but never could do any of the assignments in the classroom at the same level that they were presenting. She realized they were using the AI, but it wasn't highlighted in the syllabus that the student couldn't use it. So she was faced with a dilemma and an ethical problem. Do you fail the student or do you work with the student? In her defense, she said she was going to work with the student, so no assignments were ever taken outside the classroom after that. Here's some practices for our students as well too. Use AI as a learning aid, not a shortcut. Make sure we spell that out to our students. Do your own thinking First, this is what I tell my students for my Math 102 class, which is our liberal arts math class. They have a project that's coming up, and I say, let's talk about in class how AI can help you with the project. However, I did tell them that I will make sure they're not using AI. I did this in transparency and saying that it will be caught in Blackboard. Shh, they don't know that. But they don't realize that when you copy anything from AI, the language and the codes behind it follow. I had a student who copied from ChatGPT. The language was perfect. Behind the scenes, I can see that it was used in ChatGPT. So when I confronted the student about it, they admitted, and I told them, well, you need to do it again. However, I just know how it's presented because certain words are different when they're highlighted, for one. Certain things are not copied correctly, and they did writing in classroom. It was not the same writing that I saw in that communication. So I knew there was a little bit difference in that. I'm also, like in the says, always transparent about how to use AI. Again, this is what my workshop for my students that we're going to talk about when they first get their project. I respect within my course, I do respect of guidelines and rules and ethics of how and why they can and cannot use AI. One of the things that's going to be spelled out to my students is that they need to cite it. We had the Writing Center come in to do a presentation, and I made sure they emphasize how to cite any AI, because I said I'm going to let them, but I also want them to do independent work. I do not want them to get over-reliant of it or overuse it as well too. So I also spell that out as well. And in respect to students, because I know they use it, I also put down the following. Did AI help you learn or just save time? I actually used that as a guide when I had a student who was in my online class, and I noticed that the project that he submitted was not his work. I know that because of the fact that in his discussions for my class was totally different from the project that was submitted. The discussions were at an average of a C, but the project was perfect. And I'm like, there is no way you did this. So I wrote down 19 questions for the student to answer. One of them I asked, in this case, did AI help you, or did you just use it as a learning tool? The student replied, no, I didn't use AI. But after the 19 questions, I realized he thinks I'm stupid. It was number 19. He's like, I just have to admit, I used AI, because he could not get past any of the questions, because whatever he wrote in the paper in the project, he forgot because he didn't write it. Do you fully understand the work I am submitting? All right. Can you or can I explain this without AI? I use these as a guide. Like I said, these are the guidelines that I put in, the questions I put in for my students when, like that student that had that example. And it helped because, like I said, after number 19, he realized he's not going to pass, because he's like, let me just admit, I just used it. I know. Here are some summaries and things to take away. AI is a powerful learning tool. There's no doubt it is a powerful learning tool, but we have to make sure we emphasize to our students, do not overuse it. Do not rely on it, and don't use it as your first defense in critical thinking. Integrity, integrate AI ethically and transparently. Make sure your students understand the reason why, rather than being one of those mean parents and saying you can't use. And we know, I've had one of those who told me I couldn't do it. I went and did it anyway. So we need to be transparent with them and tell them why they can't use something and why the ethical ramifications will happen. Foster AI literacy for your students and for the faculty as well too. It is not alone just for us to tell our students they can't use something, but we need to understand why, in this case, as faculty members, how it and can be used. And when I say that, we want to know that, because we always hear ChatGPT, but do we know exactly how to use it? Do we know exactly how to prompt it? Do we know how to safeguard ourselves from it? We as instructors and faculty members need to know that before we can tell our students not to do something. Maintain academic integrity and human oversight. Again, going back to my student who thought that I didn't recognize his own writing. Therefore, use some type of tool that you can recognize your students. We are not the experts in writing, because this is not, all of us are not English teachers. However, we all know what type of students we're dealing with. We know them based on whatever they submit, if it's just a sentence or a paragraph or even a page. We get an idea of our students, but if something changes within that, you can notice those little changes because AI has been in there and helping them, or it took over and did the entire work for them. The future of AI learning is a human enhancement and knowledge. Yes, I know a lot of my colleagues here will probably disagree that AI is not, but it is. It does help some of our students when there's things that we cannot explain to them, even if it is in a language that we don't speak. For example, I am very good at speaking Spanish, but teaching in Spanish may not be something I'm really good at. You're like, why is that? You speak Spanish. But I may not know how to explain it well because this is not my conversational tool. It's me going home and talking to my family. But it's different when you're trying to explain to someone a certain terms or concepts that you normally don't use all the time. For example, in Alex, which is a product that we use in the math department, it does. It has a language component for our students who may think or don't know how to read or understand English. It will change it to Spanish to help them understand it. It's programmed to do so when a student clicks on Spanish. But it also, in this case, can play a video in their native Spanish tongue. And Alex, or McGraw-Hill, added 16 of them because they realized that Spanish is not universal. So they went back and changed some of the things to help students to be accommodatable. And also, they're adding Lithuanian language, if I'm saying that correctly, Polish, and Chinese, Mandarin. They're adding those for the future to help students based on whatever country that Alex or McGraw-Hill is being used. So having these tools in this case is very important for us to make sure that we are educating our students, safeguarding the integrity of learning, and making sure that we are being an accredited institution, that we're not just passing our students on just because of using AI. Granted, there is a university, and in fact, the University of Indiana is actually using in their law program. Law students have to come in using AI. They're doing that to see exactly how students are being tested and see if they're going to be using it in the field. It is the first university in the United States using it in a law program. Now, is to say that other programs will follow? Maybe, but they're testing it because they were doing it for their entry students coming into their law school. So they were required to take a class of AI in law. I thank you, everyone, and I open this up to any questions and concerns that you may have so we can expand on our discussion of AI in the classroom and in your syllabus. I do want to emphasize for all of you, and doing this, great pleasure to me, but it's also been a lot of going to different workshops and also conferences, talking with other individuals from different institutions, how they approached it. In the time when I was the CTE coordinator, the faculty coordinator for all of you, I attended a lot of workshops with my colleague, Shelley, where other colleagues around different institutions, community colleges, are facing the same thing. How do we teach our faculty the things that they need to know about AI before they go out and teach our students the same way? How do we set up parameters and guidelines in our classrooms before we do it ourselves? How do we, as faculty members, know exactly how to see if our students are overusing it, using it, or relying on it? I know, most of us would think, Tuan, you mentioned all three, aren't they the same? Not necessarily. A lot of students may use it here and there. There may be some students that rely on it solely, and we just don't know about it. And then you have that one student that relies on it and solely and always use it in every class and not realizing that, why is my teacher noticing the difference in my writing? Because they think that we don't know that. And one of our colleagues in this case, at Lake County, who was teaching English, she noticed that in her class as well too.